To the person that left a comment yesterday in the community section, asking that Lori Lightfoot show up on OnlyFans, I don't know how you sleep at night, son. I really don't. Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you very much for watching, for liking the video, and for subscribing. It not only helps me out, helps our channel out, but it also helps the next person out there who's looking for this channel and our videos to find the community. So thank you very much for doing that. Also, Kathleen Larson, thank you for sponsoring the coffee this morning. The food inflation is real. I appreciate that, man. So, as you might have guessed from the thumbnail art, I was talking a little bit yesterday, ran into a beaverine, really cool dude, by the way. Truck driver, awesome. I respect it. We had a short conversation, and about, I don't know, a minute or so into it, totally out of the blue, I got blindsided with this question. When do you think it will happen? And I turned around to look at him because I wasn't sure what he was talking about. And he said, Civil War. Um, and I was really put on the spot then and there because that's a huge question, a huge topic. And of course, I don't carry a crystal ball with me, especially at Bojangles if you caught yesterday's video, but it's very hard to predict something like that. But I'm gonna cover what I told him yesterday. First and foremost, I don't know that we're ever going to see a red hot civil war in the conventional sense here in the United States. Not like we saw the first time around because we have so many other issues. Last time around, clear cut sides, clear cut objectives. I don't know that we see that again. I think that we may see economic collapse first, martial law, perhaps, definitely a lot of social chaos. Um, and it will look like, to a degree, it will look like civil war. I mean, there are going to be a lot of the same traits, right? But I was again put on the spot and I wanted to answer the guy's question. So I said, if something to the effect of if I was a betting man, he was pretty big, so I didn't say son. I didn't want him to pound me, to be honest with you. But I said after the 2024 election, sometime after the election, if I'm looking at that level of social chaos or that level of violence here within our own borders, it's going to be after the 2024 election. And I've got a challenge for the chat this morning and the replay crowd. Name one candidate who is either running or considering running for president of the United States in 2024 that can unify the country. Not which candidate do you think will be best to help the United States over the next 4 years, not the best stopgap or not somebody that's going to minimize the damage, so to speak, but somebody that can take the left wing, the extreme left, and the extreme right and bring them together and work this country back up to where we're not on the verge of civil war. Because as I look at the candidates, I don't see a single one. I just don't. I know many of you are fans of Donald Trump. If he were to win, yeah, he would help the country in certain ways, but he's not going to unify the country. If Biden wins, he's not going to unify the country. I haven't seen a single independent who is going to be able to unify the country. Chris Christie's not going to do it. Nikki Haley's not going to do it. Gavin Newsom's not going to do it. Pull any name out that you want to. I think the damage is done. And because of that, I don't see a situation where the US recovers. But I don't know, again, I don't know if it leads to civil war or if we collapse in a different way, okay? They took this whole divide and conquer strategy that they've been using now for decades and decades, you know. We've spoken about this before, nation. Keep this side pissed at this side and vice versa, and this allows us to stand behind the curtains and play Wizard of Oz, if you will. But they took it to another level. We've reached the point now. It just feels like for the past few years now people will point to Donald Trump and they'll say it's Trump's fault. Trump did this. This began to happen when Donald Trump took office. But I would disagree with that statement. As I've heard it put best, Trump was not the problem. He was the symptom of the problem. He's the first one that really exposed how divided the United States was. Mainstream media for decades has been pouring gasoline all over the place, and our politicians have been striking matches and throwing them. It's just a matter of time before it burns, is what I'm saying. And the divide is real, folks. I mean, it just is. This country, to my estimation and in my opinion, son, this country has been involved in a shotgun marriage since the end of the first Civil War. These were two countries at that time. Now, some people will debate and they'll say, well, the Confederate States of America wasn't really a country. But as I've said in the past, they had a president, they had their own legal tender, they had their own capital, they had their own capital city, they had their own standing army. To me, they were a standing country. But let me know what you think in the comments either way. Um, so I think we've been involved in a shotgun marriage since that time. And it used to be that the left and the right in this country, because they've never quite gotten along, right? They just disagreed on certain things. Abortion, for example, the death penalty, um, capital punishment would be another one that people have always been divided on. But at the end of the day, even in our Congress, bunch of thieves, let me add, but even in our Congress, they would agree to disagree, and there was a certain level of respect between the two aisles, and we just don't have that anymore, folks. Now we're arguing over beer brands. This is how far we have fallen as a country. We're arguing over music, the national anthem, the flag. Tennis shoe companies have divided this country somehow, some way. Coffee companies. Shout out to Bones Coffee. I'm not sponsored, but daggone, they got some good coffee, son. Theme parks. Yeah, theme parks somehow have become divisive. Not that I'm a fan of Disney to begin with. Department stores. I mean, it feels like I'm waking up every morning or almost every morning. Okay, logging in, henpecking because that's how I usually do it. What are we angry about today? What are the two extreme wings arguing about today? And who are we boycotting today? Seems like a new boycott every day. And, some of them are legitimate. Some of them need to happen, but I mean, it is what it is. So to answer this question with a little more detail, I don't think this is two conventional sides. I think this is 100 or so large cities here in the United States versus rural America. This is how I view it. And so again, you're not going to be able to look at a map and say this side and this side. It's all over the place. The water is muddy at this point. And it just seems like we're in a slow collapse. Many of you agree with this, maybe some of you don't. But at some point it's not going to be so slow. The closer we get to the ground, the quicker it's going to begin to happen, I think. And what's the best way to fast track it to where we just smash into the ground? Mass illegal immigration. Muddy the waters as much as possible. If you go back a couple of years, if YouTube hasn't removed them, who knows anymore? But if you go back a couple of years at least on this channel, I was telling you folks, the ones that were here, I said, they're going to overload the system that we have. Okay. Organizations like the police, the welfare system, everything is going to become overloaded to the point where it just collapses. This is the design of a certain Asian nation. Some of you may know who I'm talking about. So when the slow fall becomes a rapid fall, it will in many ways resemble what most of us consider to be a civil war. Most of us, we're like the blue and the gray, and muskets are out and things like this. There will be a lot of that. It may not be blue and gray, and it certainly won't be muskets in 2023 unless liberals on Capitol Hill get their way. But you're going to see a lot of the same stuff. You're going to see a lot of the chaos out in the streets. You're going to see the same famine and the shortages and soldiers that are involved from the enemy force maybe not being so nice when they come through a community and stuff like this, similar to the March to the Sea back during the Civil War. Are people prepared for that, though? Are they prepared to do what is necessary? Because it's going to get very violent if we see a situation like that. I mean, you're going to have to do unspeakable things just to protect your family. And that's something that I don't know if a lot of people have made that connection yet or not. I know some of you have. Some of you are veterans, some of you have actually seen war, seen battle. You understand what's going on. But it's one thing to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, I'll sit in a rocking chair with a box of ammo, let the zombies come." But when the zombies actually come, how many people up here are wired for that? How many people are going to be willing to do what they have to do in order to survive and their families survive? War is not glamorous. It's glamorous in the movies and a lot of the books that you read and stuff, but it's nasty. It's nasty on a military level, and it's nasty on a civilian level, and oftentimes more so on a civilian level. If you go back, not trying to bore you with history this morning, folks, but if you go back and you look throughout history at the major conflicts, more often than not, you will see more civilian deaths than anything else, right? You can talk about the Battle of Britain, yada, 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 but think about all the civilians that were being bombed there and also in Germany, for example, that really had very little to do with the war, and that was their new reality. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to live in a community that could be bombed or shelled at any point in time from long distance? That kind of mental preparation is not something you can buy on Amazon. I mean, it's just not. Trust me, if it was, there are creators out there that would figure out a way to become affiliates with that as well. You just can't buy that mental state on Amazon or anywhere else. I pray that we don't see a civil war, but trust me, we're going to see something close to it. Even during an economic collapse, okay? If the EBT runs out, maybe it's not a full-on economic collapse. Maybe it's, "Hey, we just don't have SSI this month, and we don't have EBT, and we can no longer pay medical bills." Total chaos. You're gonna look out of the curtains if you live in a city, and you're gonna swear, "Oh my god, there's a civil war going on," but in reality, it's something totally different, but it looks very much the same. Bringing me to a Patreon question. Again, I'm trying to cover the Patreon and Coffee Club. So here's the deal, some of you have asked. Patreon and the Coffee Club, we do an exclusive stream called The After Party now. We do this once a week and we just have a low key chat. And I asked him this past week, what's some stuff that you want to talk about this upcoming week? And somebody said, can we please discuss physical, mental, and spiritual prepping? And I thought it would be a good time to bring this up because we're sitting here talking about the horrors of war, right? These are all huge topics. These topics are so large that there are literally channels out there that focus on one of the three. I know that there are a couple in chat right now that focus on these, and that's awesome. But since I'm sitting here built like Lou Ferrigno, son, that's for you younger folks. That's the original Incredible Hulk, and that's a bald face lie. I do not look like Lou Ferrigno, but I digress. I'm going to start with the physical aspect of it. And again, there are channels out there that focus entirely on the physical aspect. They're absolute experts in what they're talking about. I'm just going to give you the skinny on this channel because that's what I do. Okay. The small things. I'll give you an example. I know that I smoke too much, whether it's pipe tobacco, whether it's Churchill cigars. The past few weeks, I've actually been debating just quitting cold turkey. It's no good for me. This is something small that I can do that physically I know is going to help me out in the long term. Okay. And it's going to save me a little bit of money too. This stuff's not cheap. So it is something I'm considering. If I do, I'll let you know because I will need prayers at that point. Lifestyle changes. So this is something as simple and that can go all over the place, but this is something as simple as what I did as a lifestyle change is I'm drinking very, very little soda now. I've keyed in on coffee in the mornings, water in the afternoons. Every now and then I'll drink some tea because again, my wife has it here, but usually it's coffee or it's water. I'll put a little flavoring or some fruit or something in it. Minimal exercise. This look, man, again, there are fitness channels out there, and if you want to be a gym rat, they'll hook you up. They'll get you in the top shape of your life. But for many of us, and I could knock the gym door down 5 days a week too. I could probably find the time, but I'm focused on the craft of writing and I'm trying to spend extra time there. It's a decision that I've made and I own it. But minimal exercise, 25 push ups a day. Get out and walk for 30 minutes in the evenings or something after it's cooled off, something like this. And stress level, which we're going to talk about in a second in more detail, but stress level. John, why do you smile on this channel? We're dealing with serious stuff. Yeah, I get it. We're dealing with serious stuff, and I do take it seriously, but I don't stress over things I can't control. John, why aren't you upset that Hunter's not in prison yet? Because I can't put him there. So it's not going to do me any good to sit around and stress about it. So I blow that one off and I focus on something else. Okay. Um, Bringing us to the mental, very, very important topic when it comes to prepping, especially facing what we're going to be facing from now until 2030 plus, okay, and beyond. Getting back to stress level. You've got to be able to deal with stress. You've got to find a way. This is not the way. And I will level with y'all. Sometimes for me, that is the way. And that's another reason that I'm trying to get away from it. My wife, my wife just earlier, she's like, God, John, you just smoked. And I'm out here 30 minutes later smoking again. I said, dealing with stress out here, honey. I am dealing with stress, but seriously, stress level, no joke. You've got to find a way to cope with it, okay? Understanding the details, getting back to understanding what you're up against, what every SHTF is exactly. It's one thing to blast out Civil War. Okay, Civil War, muskets time, right? But there are a lot of details that go into a Civil War that I don't know if people have thought through or not. Just the details on anything. An EMP, I've got an EMP shield, I've got a Faraday cage. What else are you going to be dealing with during that time? Are you mentally prepared for all of that stuff? Okay. Coping with tough times, which we're going to talk about in great detail here in a moment. You've got to be able to cope with tough times. We all have them. All right. If you're going through a tough time right now, this is my strategy. All right. I know tough times are not going to last forever. So I put my head down and I keep on marching, so to speak, because once I get through it, it's going to make me appreciate the good stuff. It really is. And this works. Okay, because I used to be one of these people back in my younger days when I had hair on my head that I would dwell on negative things, and I would ask why. And I've just learned to keep marching, and the good Lord will work it out. This is how I deal with it. And learn from your mistakes. This is totally a mental thing. We talked a couple of weeks ago about people that continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over. Then they get that victim mentality like, why me? Because you're making the same mistakes. You have to learn from mistakes. We all make them. But you can look at a mistake especially if you continue to make the same one and you can say, why me? Why me? Why me? Or you can look at mistakes the way I do. This is a perfect chance to learn. You know, some of the greatest people, not that I'm among them, but some of the greatest people in human history have learned through trial and error. And this is how they've been successful. Um, I'm gonna share a story with y'all real quick. It involves this tattoo right here on my arm for those that didn't know I had it. I've actually got two. I'll explain the other one in a minute. I used to watch a podcast here on YouTube called One Warrior Nation. He's a former wrestler, as we call it here in the South. But after he retired, he was huge into philosophy and he was huge into reading. And I connected with his podcast just because he had a way of explaining things without all of the fluff that you normally get on YouTube. And I really connected with his message. But he said something that stuck with me. He's passed away now, but he said something probably 15 years ago, and it's always stuck with me. People would ask him what he was passionate about. You know, what are you passionate about fishing? Are you passionate about weightlifting? Because he was huge into that. He said, passion is my passion. He was literally passionate about being passionate, and you cannot defeat that. When somebody is passionate in that way, they are undefeatable. And this really pulled me into his podcast and convinced me to do all this right. But passionate people, we will find a way. Haters do not get in the way. Haters do not matter. All of the negative stuff that's being thrown your way, son, it just falls off. It does not matter. You keep churning. And this is literally how I approach everything in life. Anything that I do. All right. And it helps greatly with the mental deal because you're going to have setbacks. You really think that I enjoyed being stuck at 50, what was it, 50,000 subscribers here on YouTube for 2 years and watching hundreds of new subscribers being purged every single day because YouTube didn't like the message. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I have a goal and I'm going to keep churning. I'm going to keep chopping wood, so to speak, until it works itself out. And it's starting to, folks. Thank y'all for that. And finally, spiritual, whatever that means to you. I'm not here to preach to you. Again, there are channels, excellent channels that will do that for you. But I suggest that you have some sort of spirituality in your life because it can change your life. I have well, we'll get into that in a minute, but it helps you cope with tough times for sure. There have been times in my life when I've been beaten down to the ground, especially when I was younger, beaten down to the ground all alone. And I could have sitting there and I could have, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why am I a victim? No, I looked up and I found spirituality and he has never let me down without fear of death. Because this is where, I'm a Christian for those that don't know, without that fear of death at the end of the road, you are fearless. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out there. I can't really speak too much on other religions because, again, I don't practice and practice whatever you want. But when you reach a certain point in spirituality, Christianity in my case, you no longer fear death. You don't want to die. You love your family. You want to be here with them forever, but there's no fear. There's no sting in fear, in death, I should say. And you become fearless. And that's dangerous, right? Especially if you're churning those legs trying to accomplish things, so to speak. So I actually have a second tattoo for anybody that's met me and paid attention. I have a small lion's head on the back of my neck. And I'll close with this. This is why I have it. This is what it stands for. It's biblical. And there was a pastor named Miles Monroe who gave a sermon once, and he talked about the lion and how it was biblical. The lion is not the biggest, he's not the strongest, he's not the fastest, he's not the smartest in the animal kingdom. And yet, every animal respects the lion. And it is a spiritual thing because if you study the line, folks, this is just my own walk of faith. If you study the line and how the line acts toward other things, it's really a blueprint for life, right? Lines can sit over here and they can watch nonsensical stuff happen over there. But if the nonsensical stuff comes near the family, the line handles business, this sort of thing. And there's, it's peace through strength. I think Ronald Reagan said that, right? Or yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the one that coined that phrase. It's the same philosophy, all right? So please prep the physical, the mental, and the spiritual if you've not done so. These are hugely important preps that not a lot of people talk about that, in my opinion, matter just as much as stacking beans and rice and water, yada, 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 all of the stuff that you've been stacking for years and years, probably, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you don't mind, shoot a thumbs up or down on the way out the door. Y'all take care and God bless.